Welcome to OutWithDan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to OutWithDan. Today I'm excited to talk to Natalie Moss about The Night Hunter. Let's see that fabulous cover, Natalie. Oh, I love that. So this is Natalie's debut novel. And as I was telling her before we started recording, debut novelists are sort of almost a little bit of a crapshoot for podcasters because we don't know the author's voice yet. Not only do I know Natalie's voice, I'm already ready for book 2, 3, and all the rest of them she's going to come out with eventually. So Natalie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for all the lovely words. I'm gushing.
Oh, wonderful. So I'm going to start my podcast off a little differently with you today. And I'd like you to give the audience sort of not just an overview about the book yet. We're going to come to that, but about your childhood, where you grew up and how you grew up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up moving to a few different places. So I was born in the Philippines. My mom is Filipino. My dad is South African. And until I was about 18, we moved across quite a few countries. So I moved to Australia, Papua New Guinea, Vietnam, as well as the Philippines and South Africa. And just saying those countries doesn't actually quite capture quite how many back and forths there were. I think, it was a lot. I think we moved on average every 2.5 years. And I think we ended up, by the time I was 18, I lived in 15 houses. I had a crazy, intense background check for one of my jobs. It was like, name all the places you've lived in. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know how to do this. I didn't even know how to do postcodes in Vietnam. I was just like, we don't have a post. It was very, very, very entertaining. But yeah, so I moved around a lot. And I think that's why I kind of write fiction the way I have is you think everyone picks something that's important to them. And for me, setting is really important. So for example, if you ask me, what were you like as a 13-year-old or as a 15-year-old? The first thing I think of is, well, where in the world was I living? Because depending on what country, what school, what city, I'm a vastly different person. I think everyone chameleons a little bit to the place they live in, but I think actually the cultures, the people, the community, the setting really, really impacts you as a person and your identity. And I explored a little bit of that in the novel, which we'll get to in a minute, but it also shaped the way that I see the world. And I think I'm a little bit unique in that I'm quite used to coming in and out of places quite a lot. And I'm quite used to trying to bring other people into it. And I think that's something I'm really passionate about. I think I'm a terrible person. I read almost all of my reviews. And some people hate the book, which I'm absolutely fine for. My skin is pretty thick at this stage. But I think what I love is that even the people who don't like the book and, ending or characters or whatever, they all love the setting. And I think they all love that aspect. And I think that's really my passion. And that's why, even though I think also the setting, the plot and characters are fantastic, but really, really it's the setting that I really care about.
Well, I must say, I'll answer those negative reviews for you if you'd like. Just forward them to me because I got something to tell these people. These people are crazy. I will say I don't like reviews and I rarely write them. The reason is because my opinion, I like certain things, and I don't think my opinion needs to form your work as far as, I wouldn't leave a negative review on someone's book because I'm like, but maybe I was in a bad mood that day. Because it does happen, we give a better review when we're happy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think 90% of all authors will say that they don't read reviews. And if you're an author or a prospective author listening, I would suggest you do not read reviews. I just happen to be a special beast that cannot not read about what everyone else is saying. And I think, it's obviously hard. And I've actually stopped now because it's a bit too close to publication when we're recording right now. But I think because I got so much feedback writing it, I'm quite used to having to filter through things that are subjective and things that, might be very specific to individuals, and try to, rather than focus on individuals, look at patterns of things. But just going back to the setting, I think speaking about South Africa in particular, and safaris, I think I would say as a setting more than a country, because obviously the wildlife doesn't really recognize these random country boundaries that we humans have created. Even though I didn't live in South Africa for all of my childhood, it was a huge, huge part of my family and my family's culture, especially from my dad's side, obviously as a South African himself. I think he very much missed it as we moved around to all these crazy places. And so my picture books were about the South African animals. Our stories were all about African animals, our family stories. And I have a little blue book at home where I wrote out all the buck and how their horns change. And, it was the kind of bonding that we had with the family. And it was a really, really big part of who we were. And I think it's an incredible privilege to be able to say that, my family worked really hard, that no matter where in the world we lived, we basically returned to a country in Africa, be it, South Africa, Mozambique, Zambia, or Uganda, or Zimbabwe, or other countries in the surrounding area that had its wildlife, that we were always able to return, maybe every 2 years on average, I think. And that is a huge privilege. I mean, I know people who've lived in South Africa their whole life who haven't been to Kruger, which, it's very different. Very different people have different priorities, and that's absolutely fine. But so I think there are a few anchor points in my life of moving country, house to house. And I think there's some of it back at my grandmother's house in the Philippines, and there's some of it as well as coming back to the bush, because it was something I came back to at different stages of my life.
So now let's talk about the setting of the book. The book is set in South Africa. I have had several clients that are South African. They're only from Johannesburg or Cape Town. So this was a new experience for me. And yes, I do realize that there are large animals in Africa. There are all kinds of animals there that we don't have here naturally. And so your eye for detail was amazing. And the setting not only is set in South Africa, but you can taste South Africa in this book. So give the audience an overview of how the book starts out and sort of an overview of what it's about, the story's about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is mainly centered around these two sisters, Danielle and Grace, who, with a few friends of theirs, with 4 friends of theirs, are traveling to the remote bush in South Africa. So they're going into a private game reserve where all of these wonderful animals roam freely. And in the center of this reserve is a house that their late mother had left to them when she died, a couple months prior. So ostensibly at the beginning, it starts as a simple, okay, 6 friends are going on a safari. They're going to visit a house. And they're going to see a couple of wild animals. But of course, because it is a thriller, chaos ensues. They become stranded. And now all of a sudden they have to walk to this house. And so you get a lot of really, really fun. I love that part. Really fun, interesting encounters with the wild animals and the setting and the heat of the area. And you also start to get a bit of a sense of this enigmatic mother that they haven't seen in a long time, and what she was doing and what maybe she has in store for them in this house. How did I do? I'm not very good at summarizing my own books.
I like that. So I want to point out something. Natalie did an excellent job of telling you the setup for the story. What she doesn't tell you is she said there were 6 friends. There are 6 people.
There are 6 people.
Because this is a thriller, I think it's important to say there's 6 people who are going to this house together. And of course, you did such a wonderful job in setting up that. We have a bit of an unreliable narrator, which I loved. And it's always important to point out she's only unreliable because she doesn't know some things. Because it's not like there's any false leading. So anyone who reads this won't be lied to, which is important to me as a reader, because I despise it when an author deceives me as a reader, because then I'm not in on the enjoyment of it. And I will say that at about 40%, I have a good girlfriend, Marie Sutro, who does a podcast, and we talk about what we read with each other almost daily. And I was telling her at about 40%, I'm like, golly, I sort of have an idea of who the bad person is, but this is early in the book, which I will say, what a great, magnificent job you did with that. You gave us all kinds of clues as to who the bad person was, but you gave us all kinds of red herrings. And red herrings are for the fish, not the safari. But I loved it.
No, I love it. And I love you mentioned the unreliable narrator. I don't think I've been asked about that before, and I've done a few interviews, but I agree. I like to think of Danielle as a bit of an unreliable narrator. But it's quite interesting because the entire book is told from her perspective, and I'm happy to spoil to you that it doesn't end with her waking up and it's all a dream, or she
Yes,
forgot
thank God.
she didn't have any vast, right? And please, this is no shade. I'm sure there are fantastic books that are able to execute that by far more talented authors than me. But it's only through the kind of contrast with her sister that we start to question her perspectives and her views of this mother. And we do get a few flashbacks. And I really actually really enjoyed that kind of playing with, what does she think of herself and her mother? What do the flashbacks say? What does her sister say? And how can we read between the lines to kind of see that murky in between of what we think really happened? And what I also like is, I think that readers will probably fall on all. So for example, like whether or not you think that you like or dislike or agree with or disagree with the mother, I suspect is something that people will completely disagree on. And I really like that. And I really liked kind of creating a person that two different sisters have two completely different opinions on. And I expect and I hope that readers have different opinions on, and they would have discussions and things like that, especially as a mother and as a woman. So I think something quite fun is that the book, the first draft of the book, what is now the mother character was the father, because it kind of feels like a very natural, oh, your big, imposing ranger with a gun is the man. And I was just going through and sitting and thinking, well, it'd be nice if it was, and I just, that can't be the mother. And then you question yourself, like, why can't it be the mother? Can the ambitious, gun-wielding, strong person not be the mother? And I think I'm so glad I made that change, because it just brings up some really interesting things that I think people are a lot harsher on her because she's a woman than if she had been a man. And obviously, I'm happy for people to disagree, but I think it's interesting. I think there's some fun. So I really appreciate that you mentioned the unreliable narrator. It's not maybe as direct as it is in some thrillers, which I do enjoy, but yeah, there's a bit of murkiness there.
It is, and I will say, I think the mother was a wise choice, because Elizabeth will never be Mother of the Year. That's just not going to happen. But I think that it's one of those things that I have seen people who withhold love from children for different reasons. And those reasons are obvious to the person withholding the love, but for whatever reason, they don't see it as withholding love. And I love the fact that the two sisters had a different opinion of their mom. They had the same mother, but they had a very different opinion. And there's some things that go on in this book, and I'm going to quote the first line of the first chapter. So there's a prologue, which I loved the prologue. I love a good prologue. That may be my favorite part of the book.
That's a Marmite opinion. Not everyone does.
Well, I can imagine. But I think that prologue sets us up for what to expect from Danielle and Grace, because it is, you see, well, I don't want to give too much away, but I will say that Danielle doesn't see herself as running away from things. This reader saw her as a person who constantly runs away. Yeah. I am more like Danielle than Grace, because if a situation gets out of hand, I run away. I don't like conflict. I don't like things that go wrong. And so I really did identify with Danielle. And maybe not proudly identify, but I did identify with her. And I know what it's like to have a parent who's a bit narcissistic and a bit of withholding. If my mom was angry, she would withhold love. There was never an explanation. And that is something that I find to be, it's very unique in a parent. And I'm glad you chose the mother, because I identified with the mother as well.
Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you. No, go. Tell me about my first line.
Oh, so yes, your first line is, people come here for the killers, which by the time I finished the book, I was like, holy cow, was that not the best first line ever? I'm like, jeepers creepers, because of course we think of the big five animals, but that's not exactly what we think of at the end of the book. We think about the carnage that's left by humans and not the animals.
Yeah, that was super deliberate. I think something obviously instilled in me by my father and my family, and I really want to put in the book is while movies like Jaws are very entertaining and are fantastic, it's a fantastic film, and I never want to say it wasn't a good film, but it does cast. You get these films that very much cast wild animals as these villains, and I think that's just not true to general nature. And even if they are dangerous, they are acting in their own natures. And I think it's up to the responsibility for the humans involved to respect, to understand, and really, yeah, I'll say it again, respect that this is not their land.
That's right.
Unusually in the whole world, this is not their land, and they need to understand what they are doing in order to survive. And I think that's something I felt very, very strongly about. I think I didn't want any jealous or like animals with a grudge or anything that I felt isn't authentic to how I think they act. Obviously, there's a little bit of drama and there's a little bit of excitement that does happen. And
a little,
yeah, there's quite a lot of drama. Yeah, there's a lot of drama in the animal encounters, but
yes,
but I really tried to keep them true to life. I worked with 2 game rangers who've been working out there day in and day out for 30 years, and they both read the book and they both gave me notes. And none of the notes were about the big stuff, because they were like, you've got it. And last thing I'll say before I stop nattering, because I'm bad at that.
Come on, natter away.
Is every animal encounter, in fact, kind of any animal mentioned in the book, is something that I myself have experienced or someone in my direct family has experienced. So every encounter, everything, I could be like, that's from that night where my mom was. The prologue is the first page. So, the hyena attack is from when my mom was standing, like chasing off a hyena with a frying pan in the middle of the night. I have such a vivid memory of that, like on the ground, face to face, wild, like, and you can point to almost any scene and it'll be like, that's based on this, or that's based on this scene or this story that I heard. So I think. So yeah, I really try to draw on real experiences, especially with the animals, which I just love them. They're just great. Some of them are terrible, but they're wonderful as well.
Well, and I think, I heard someone once say, if you go on a safari, they're not in your world, you're in their world. And we've all seen video clips on YouTube about an animal attacking a vehicle. And that animal has been provoked somehow, some way.
Absolutely.
They don't roam the earth looking to hurt people. They roam the earth, period. We typically, as humans, rush up to them, rush them, scare them, what have you. I was driving up in the Sequoias here in California one time, and all of a sudden there were all these cars on both sides of this 2-lane road, and I thought, what in heaven's name? And then I looked off to the side and I saw a bear cub, and people were out there filming it and getting closer and closer. And I thought, okay, if you get mauled by the mother, it's your fault. Stop being stupid. It is an animal that doesn't know you. You're not going to be able to pet it and feed it and take it home and nurse it. It doesn't work that way. The mother will kill you. And fortunately, I didn't read in the news that anyone got mauled, but I'm like, I think moose look friendly. I gather they're not friendly at all. And
I don't know. Are they not?
Moose or elk? It's moose, or maybe it's elk. Sorry. And of course they roam naturally in Alaska, and people try to pet them. And I'm like, don't do that.
What are you doing?
I mean, I'm curious to touch a rhino one day, but it's going to have to be enclosed.
Yeah, I actually have touched a rhino, but that's from volunteering for an orphaned rhino. I definitely do not in any way, shape, or form recommend getting out of the car with one. If you're lucky enough to see one in the wild. They're very difficult to see these days.
Well, and it's funny because we have one of the world's 20 great zoos here in Los Angeles. And I wonder if we have a rhino. I don't know. I know we have elephants, and we have all kinds of caged animals. But I'm like, and of course, we agreed not to talk about politics. I'm never sure how I feel about a zoo because I'm like, that animal is not in its natural habitat. It is nice for people to learn about education and stuff, but I just don't know whether an elephant at the LA Zoo is appropriate because they're never going to be able to roam freely. But then they could be poached, which is another huge thing that happens in this world.
Yeah, elephants are particular. I won't go into too much detail because you could have a whole podcast just on that. But I think elephants are an interesting example because if you see them in the wild, you see just how many hundreds of kilometers they naturally cover in a normal cycle. So I think it's a tough one. But yeah, I won't add any further detail because I appreciate as well that without education and exposure, you can't get people on side for the importance of conservation. And while I won't say anything definitive on, my perspective on zoos, I do think that's why there's some really lovely environmental fiction, The Night Hunter being one of them, but Charlotte McConaughey is coming out with some stunning stuff and you had God of the Woods, and there's so much stuff about that. And I think creating empathy, wonder, and interest in understanding and seeing these animals and also the vegetation and everything, and really appreciating that value, I think it's a really good thing that I'm seeing a lot more of in recent times.
Well, Natalie, I have to say once again, what a wonderful debut novel. What a wonderful novel, whether it's your debut or not. It is wonderful. It's called The Night Hunters by Natalie Moss. It's out now. Highly, highly recommended.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm so excited for everyone to read it. Don't worry, I won't read your review.
I'm telling you, send any bad reviews to me. I'll fend them off for you. Wonderful. Thank you for being a guest, Natalie.
No, I've had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on, and I've loved our conversation.
So did I. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.